are big market strategies. But understanding who your competitor is as a person and how they see the world might help you. And them, frankly, them understanding you. You never know where these synergies might be useful to both of them.
Sorry. Yeah.
Mirage asked a couple questions, touching on Justin's point. How much competition is too much competition? What I would say is when I hear a competitor or I from a startup and they're trying to go against a competitor who has already raised tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars and they have not raised a dime yet, or they've raised a small seed round, that usually feels like a bad market to enter. So it's about how far ahead a competitor may be if you're trying to attack them directly. Now, if you're trying to do something that's like them, but in a market in a sub segment that is under served, and you think there's enough revenue there to really drive and build a big company, then go for it. So it's a little bit, you have to sort of listen to the details and understand. The number of people attacking it isn't probably as important as how far behind are you on fundraising and market penetration. And when should you not enter a market? I think I kind of answered that question. I wouldn't enter a market where somebody is so far ahead that it's an Herculean task for me to overcome it. Of course, there are always examples of people who enter those and are successful. But in my life, I'm trying to pick the easier way to success, not the more difficult way. Emma, I often find competitors in my market by accident. Is there a list of established startups, companies, and what market they serve? Probably only the tools that you've already learned about in class. Things like AngelList is a great place to find other startups. There's also other sort of sites like AngelList that VentureWire is another one that you can sort of look through. But those are probably the best places for you to look at your market segment and learn about startups that you may not have heard of before. Raj asked, I have been in a situation where I got halfway through my concept just to find out someone else is doing it. I do my research, but someone may come out with the same idea, but with more forced funding. What do you recommend at this point? Welcome to the jungle, Mr. Moore. That's what I would say. So you've heard me say this when we have our class coming up in a couple weeks about idea creation. No idea is original. There just aren't any original ideas. I think you have to accept that and you kind of roll with that, and it is what it is. So I often tell founders, and so therefore, even if I haven't heard a pitch from someone or they haven't heard a pitch from someone that's like this, I promise you somewhere out there, someone the exact same thing. The exact same solution. So it's all about executing and doing the best you can. So finding a competitor is not the end of the world, I guess is the short answer. It would not freak me out to know that I have a competitor doing what I'm doing, even if their solution is nearly identical. Now, if you are trying to do something and all of a sudden Apple or Google is doing the exact same thing, and they just launched that product, well, that is a little scary and should probably give you pause. But if it's just another startup, and even if they've raised some money, unless they've raised, $100 million and you haven't raised a dime, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I'd keep going. Do any of the companies at WV team up with competitors? Yep, happens quite a bit. The combining or the tucking under, if you will, of one company with another happens a lot. We've actually even done it inside the portfolio a couple times. We've taken one portfolio company, and tucked it into another. That's happened a few times. And sometimes that's competition, and sometimes that is just synergies, well, tangential. So you have competitors within the portfolio. See, that's the interesting thing, Mirage. It's not that we start off with competitors, but we do start off with people that are remotely, or maybe they're targeting a similar vertical. For example, we have 500 Friends and Social Toaster are both very similar type of problem solvers. Brands attack their social media problem. They go at it in very different ways. We talked to both before we did the investment. We did the investment in Social Toaster second, so we talked to 500 Friends first. By the way, 500 Friends was acquired, announced today. So Merkle bought 500 Friends. But before we did the investment, we did talk to 500 Friends to make sure that they didn't see it as competition. So we did that. They're eerily similar. We had a company called Test Soup and a company called Apply Kit, and we merged those two companies together. They weren't competitors at the time, but both of them pivoted enough that they were ending up at similar places. So we put them together. So those things happen a lot. Mirage is asking if someone has a TV on in the background.
The conference is now in presentation mode. Your line is muted.
Now we don't have to worry about if there's a TV on in the background. And I can tell you, I don't have a TV on in the background. I do have a TV on in the house, but it is 3 stories away or 3 floors away. So if you can hear that, I have the greatest microphone in North America right now. All right. Any other questions about competition or the like? Michael, difference note approach competitive startup and more established launching product? That's a good question. Yeah, I would say most of the time an established company is slower to move and slower to change and pivot. And usually an established company also needs, if they're introducing something new, needs the success to be larger than a startup does. It's just kind of how those things work. So sometimes your analysis has to be, I would say, a little wider. because you know at some point you're going to be attacking larger marketplace than a startup might be, and so you might have to cast a wider net as an established company to introduce a new product than, let's say, a startup who's just trying to figure it out. Yeah, Mirage asked, it may be broad and depend on application, but what differentiators does one look for? It is obviously dependent on, vertical and the like, and what types of products and all of that good stuff. Obviously, if you're some kind of biomedical product, competitor, what you might look at is very different than, let's say, some kind of software offering. But generally speaking, I think it comes down to a handful of things. Is it, and you know this if you think about it, is it is it cheaper to manufacture or produce um, than your competitor? Is it is that therefore then you might be able to make it a cheaper price point thing, or is it does it uh, have a specific different functionality? Is it easier to use? Is it you know faster? These are the differentiators. But I would say um, I think and Mirage is asking a follow up question: is it okay to say it's the same product with just a feature added? I think that's okay to say, but here's what you got to be careful of: is that feature actually what the customer is actually looking for? And that's probably where I would tell you to focus: is figure out who your customer is or who you want your customer to be, and is your differentiator something that they actually care about? Let's take it for a quick for instance. Is It's not really all that interesting to. Here's a great one. If today you told me that you have a car that has intermittent wipers and one that doesn't, while that's a nice feature, it may not be enough for it to differentiate me to buy one over the other, if the other one has a lower price point or something or significantly lower price point or significantly better service record. Because that's not a driving force in why I would buy a car. Does it have intermittent wipers or not? And that may be the case for lots of products and offerings as a customer. And every customer, obviously, and every customer type is different as well. Um, you know, there are customer bases, customer groups where ease of use is by far the most important thing. If you're selling solutions to a retail market, retailers generally need easy to use and easy to deploy. If it's remotely complicated, you're going to lose to a competitor. It's easier to use and easier to deploy because it's a marketplace where they need simple. So it all depends. Once again, in some cases, price is the most driving force. So if you're just plain cheaper, that's good, especially when it comes to government contracts. Um, you gotta always bid to win. So um, these are all things that are important. Uh, Mirage's question leads. What is the best way to get data to see if your differentiators are significant? Um, Once again, it's all going to depend on the situation a little bit. But what I would say is, I would do direct interviews of customers, and that's what I would do. Um, I would, if it's a consumer product, I would still do direct customer interviews. I would do focus groups, and I would figure out, here is my product, here's a competitor's product. Here's what I think's better about my product. Here's what they think's better about them. What drives you to buy one or the other? If you have purchased one of these, what made you make the decision one over the other? And don't use surveys. Surveys, people lie on surveys. That's what they do. They just get through a survey to get done it. Do interviews. Actually communicate with them. Watch them how they interact with a product. Watch them how they discuss a product. That's important. Those are things. It's surveys are a nice solution, Raj. It allows you to compile data, but you have a hard time learning from surveys. You really do. My experience is that it is a very hard to learn and understand your customers if you rely on surveys. Surveys are a fine tool, and they can give you some aggregated data, but you'll learn less from a survey than if you sent out a survey and got 100 responses to a survey, and you called and had or visited and met with 10 customers. I promise you'll learn 2 orders of magnitude more from talking to those 10 customers than you will from getting 100 survey responses. Michael asks, if you were analyzing competitive landscape product idea, what approach would you take in order to identify if there are potential market or gaps that are not being filled? I would talk to existing users. I would talk to customers of tangential products. And because everything is being solved some way today, right? There's very little, let's create a brand new market in the whole world. I mean, if that's what you're trying to do, then you're going to have to go out on a limb and just take chances there. But most of the time, you are replacing something, even if that replacement is not actually a product. We do everything on a spreadsheet today. Okay, well, that could mean that there's an opportunity to build a CRM-like product. But well, you don't know that until you go out there and talk to people who will actually give you money for what your solution is. So, I mean, it's the old Tom Siebel trick. You go, you have interviews with people, and you find out what their biggest pain point is in their business, and say, if I could solve this pain point for you, would you pay for it? And then you go off and build that, and then sell it to them. So that's what I would do if I was trying to attack a market. I would go to potential customers and find out what their pain point is. What is it that is their biggest problem in their business? And if I can solve that for them, is there enough money in it? Will they pay me enough money to build a good business out of it? Yeah, and Mirage asked, mentioned that finding, things that are your pain point in your own life is a good thing. Um, Michael, are there any indicators or trends that signify an attractive market to examine further? Monopoly business are often susceptible to innovation, a la Uber, blah, 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 going after more of a monopoly business. Sure, but sometimes it's just about, kind of guessing right? I mean, I don't think, you know, I don't think Uber did anything that was magical getting this ready for launch. Sometimes you just fall into things by hustling. And so, I mean, I guess I don't look necessarily for things. What I look for is things that are broken. And I think Uber looked and found a situation where something is broken and they had a solution. It's more about not necessarily about finding things that are a monopoly, at least in my mind. It's more about finding something that's completely broken and can I solve it? Can I build a solution to solve it? By the way, we'll spend some time talking about ideas and attacking ideas in a class in a couple weeks. Um, yeah, that is one of the problems. It's funny you should mention that, Mirage. I just had a beer tonight with a founder who was an academy grad, and we it was an EIR with us, and is now a founder, CEO of a portfolio company. And he's really tired of being in the particular vertical he's in. I won't mention the vertical because I don't want you to try to work backwards and figure out which company it is. But you know, he doesn't really want to be in the space he's in. But now he is a complete domain expert in this space. He is a well-known domain expert and built a company that some other people um, uh, but might want to really target and maybe acquire the company. So it's an interesting situation. So it's always a pain point to wake up one day and realize that you're an expert in something that you don't want to be an expert in. Um, so now, Sema asked a question. If you wanted to focus on the government sector, would that present a big enough market software product, or would you want to see a bigger focus? I don't know. I don't like any business that targets the government as a customer, so it really isn't all that interesting to me. I can tell you, we would never fund a company that is targeting the government sector. So, um, so I guess from a personal standpoint, no, I don't really care. If the company targets both, um, maybe, probably not though. Probably not very interesting to me if you're targeting both. One of those quick no's for me. As soon as I hear that you think you're going to get any money out of the federal government, I usually stop caring. Doesn't even have to be federal government, frankly. State, municipalities. If any part of your target audience is a public sector source of money, then I probably don't care. There are lots of other people that do. I just don't. Yeah, it's not, and Mirage, it's not that there's too many hoops to jump through. It's that I know that sales cycles are ridiculously long. So if sales cycles are ridiculously long, I really don't want to deal with startups who are struggling to try to figure out how they can get that done. Yeah, sales cycle with the DoD can be up to 18 months. I bet you it even can be longer than that. I had a startup who I was mentoring a couple years ago and was assured to get a DoD contract for this ship cleaning system that they had built that was patented, blah blah blah, fantastic, all that great cycle. They went through all of that, had the quote unquote contract in hand, not quite, and lo and behold, it took another 18 months, and they still didn't get it. So it's just why we don't really touch it, to be honest with you. All right, Mirage asked a question. How fast do you want to grow, catch up to a competitor? Um, I don't know. Is there a risk about growing your own capabilities? I'm not sure. It's so situational. I mean, generally speaking, growth is a good thing. I'd rather be growing than not growing. So it's good problems to have. So, and yes, you can outgrow your capabilities or grow too fast. And you can't service the customers that you get, or these are all good problems to have. I've never met a startup yet who would give up growth for better. Yeah, I totally understand, Mirage. Sometimes it's hard to ask questions, um, you know, and not make them so broad. It's hard, and hey, if you think it's hard for you to ask them, it's hard as hell for me to answer them. All right. Well, we've hit about 40-ish minutes and had a good number of questions here. Um, once again, I could never record tonight. Mirage has it recorded. So if Mirage, if you have it recorded, if you want to go and upload it to the workspace, that's great. I can link it in, or you can link it in on the particular day. That's great. That's fantastic, and thanks for doing that. Hopefully, Join Me solves it for next week. In the meantime, remember tomorrow you'll see some emails talking about the due diligence teams and getting you assigned there and starting to get you to work on those in your groups, which is always great. And, and in the meantime, if you got any questions or anything else you want to send along, we're always happy to be useful. If you got any feedback on the classes, feel free to drop me a line. I always like to hear what people are thinking and if they're getting what they want. All right. Well, have a joyous evening, everyone, and I will see you next week.